In the last video, I created a simple rain barrel out of a trash can. Now, I was ready to add another barrel to collect even more water. Putting the barrels together was not that difficult, but I had to make some strategic corrections that you will understand as we go along. I already had some PVC pipe and a pool pump hose from the previous owner's above-ground pool, so why not use them? I got a 1.5-inch bulkhead that would fit both the PVC pipe and the pool hose that would move as much water as possible. All I needed to do was cut the length I needed to connect the two barrels. While I was at it, I also realized that water is pretty heavy, so I added an extra cinder block to my existing stand and bought 3 more to make sure the barrels were firmly supported. Once I set up the blocks for the second barrel, I needed to measure out the distance between the two, and I decided on 16 inches and moved my blocks accordingly. I'm putting in the connecting holes at the bottom rather than at the top because that way both barrels will fill up equally with pretty much the same amount of water at the same time, and I would only need one faucet to empty all the barrels. And I could add more barrels later, but still only use one faucet. With that decision made, I started to trace and cut the hole for the first bulkhead. Luckily, my hole saw kit did have the attachment for this size hole. I used a little sandpaper to clean out around the hole so the bulkhead would fit snugly. I like these bulkheads because they came with gaskets and a big screw to create a tight fit without caulking or silicone, and the threads were deep enough that I could simply screw on the pump hose. One down, one to go. On to the original container to create the second bulkhead hole. With the second bulkhead done, I just needed to line them up and screw in the pump hose connecting the two barrels. I had to be careful to leave one side a little loose to work in the final connection, because once connected, I could no longer move the hose, but had to tighten by turning the bulkhead. Easy peasy. It worked like a charm. I decided to use a garden hose for overflow. Otherwise, I would have to make another trip to the big box store to get elbows for the PVC opening to direct the flow of water. It was easier to simply use the garden hose because I already had that attachment, and while not perfect, it was an overflow hole. And while at it, realized I needed an exhaust outlet for the top of the second barrel so that during the heat of the day, air could escape. I already had that piece so I could use it, and all I needed to do was cut a hole and screw it into the top. It all went pretty quickly as the rain clouds began to form. I was now ready to see how much water I could collect. As the rain started, I could see water flowing into the barrels and was feeling pretty good about my setup. But then, as the rain became heavier, in no time, both tanks were full, and that little garden hose could not keep up. I at least had the good sense to create trenches so the water coming out of the tanks could flow away from the house. I quickly learned that an inch of rainwater is equal to almost 600 gallons of water. Once the rain finally stopped, I realized where I went wrong. The overflow opening could easily be corrected by installing a 1.5-inch overflow pipe. I was greedy and installed the 1.5-inch pipe to connect the barrels. And if I wanted to install more barrels, I couldn't downsize the pipes because they had to match if I wanted them to fill at the same time and not throw off the flow to the one faucet. I was now committed to the 1.5-inch pipe for all future barrels. Not a big deal, but good to know. Sufficiently humbled, I ordered a reasonably priced bendable 1.5-inch pool hose for the overflow. And while I waited for that to arrive, cut off a section of the PVC pipe to take with me to the big box store to look at connection alternatives for extra barrels. I was able to match up an attachment that was not as expensive as the bulkhead I used before and fit my PVC pipe like a glove. I also learned I should buy an elbow spout for the second barrel exhaust so air could get out, but no light could get in to promote algae. Followed up with a black tarp cover over the first barrel that would keep out light, but also allow the water to flow in. I now have plenty of rainwater for my garden, and it could not have come at a better time because my local utility just sent out an announcement that a rate increase was coming and water would cost more. See you next time.